Hello, everyone, and welcome to GMIHub Online. I am Cheryl Dewick. I'm so glad that you are here tonight. Tonight it's all about the bass. All about the bass. I had that song roaming around in my head. I know if Dale was here, we'd be dancing around singing that song. And I am so excited to have with me um, four wonderful bassists, one of which is going to be my co-host this evening. Welcome to Colin Ward, who is our co-host. Thank you so much for being here, and a fellow bassist. He has a strong passion for this instrument. I'm also very thankful for our guests tonight. We have, I think you're all band and session and live bass players. We have Tim Ball here from Ontario. We have Gord Lemon from BC, and we have Chris from Calgary, Alberta. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. And you can unmute and say hi to everybody.
Hello. Well, an honor to be here.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
And just for the record, I'm formerly from the GTA, moved out to Vancouver 10 years ago almost now, because I just didn't want to be caught in the heat wave and or the opposite of that anymore. So,
It's one or the other. It's never in the middle.
exactly.
We literally had snow last week.
Oh, yes.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
See, I thought out west had the crazy weather. It's just Canada.
Yeah.
So a little bit about, I guess, all of you. I'd like to learn a little bit more about the bass, but I just want to remind everybody that you can like and subscribe. You are here right now. I want you to share this experience. You probably are fans of these gentlemen right now. I know you are. So go ahead and share the experience. And we are here available on all social medias, well, all Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So you definitely can follow us on that. I also want to tell you we have a website, gmihub.ca, where you can learn a lot about the events that we are doing, any special programs, and learn about our newsletter where we highlight the different activities happening with all our members. Or members, to be a member, just basically send your email address and that's it. So without further ado, I want to get into this conversation about the bass. So where do I start? We'll go alphabetical. Chris. Chris is a bass player. He's a session bass player. He's a band bass player or a live bass player with the Roadhammers. If you're into country music, you would know them. Chris, tell us about the beginnings of bass with you.
Well, like a lot of bass players that started the same, where I was actually a guitar player and then ran into a band that needed a bass player when I was 15 years old. So that's what I did. I was actually, I had to go to my mom because I had no money to pay for any gear, of course, being 15 years old. And she made a deal with me that if I graduated from high school, she would loan me the money to buy a bass guitar and an amp. And so that's what we did. And I managed to finish high school by the skin of my teeth. And I haven't really looked back since. So that was my beginning, you know. And like I said, I know a lot of bass players that have the same story. I don't know about you two guys, but three guys, sorry.
Gord, why don't you tell us your story?
Well, mine was not that. I actually started on accordion. I don't admit that to everybody, so I know no one else is listening. So
that's cool.
You guys. Yeah. I started I was like 6 or 7. Started accordion. It's a whole crazy story about how that happened. And then played trumpet starting in public school at age 12, and actually went to college as a trumpet player as my major, and there was a band at our high school, and I just was obviously, as any kid, getting into rock, getting into the music of the day, and I was friends with all these guys in the band, and I was super jealous of the bass player, and so I got my mom to buy me a guitar, and I just wanted to pick out the bass lines. So, and one Christmas, I go downstairs Christmas Day, and there's a bass and an amp sitting there, and I was bawling my eyes out at that. So I was 16 at the time. So,
All right.
but yeah, then I went to college and university in jazz for trumpet, and then I switched to bass as my major. So
Wow, so you're a trumpet player as well? Oh, so we got to get you back on talk about trumpet too. That's awesome. Tim, tell us your story.
Well, much like Chris, I started on guitar lessons when I was 9, and by the time I reached grade 7, I wanted to join the school band, and there was no guitar spot, but they had a bass spot. So just picked up the rental bass, and I was like, okay, where has this been all my life? Right. So I very quickly made the switch to bass and started playing at the youth band, and then the regular church band. Then around when I was 14, I was introduced to choir gospel music, and I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. So yeah, and I've just been on that ever since, and now I'm leading the worship team at church. I'm music director and doing a lot of the producing and stuff, especially now with the online thing. You have to actually do a lot of making sure it actually sounds good rather than just putting it out there. So my hands are a lot in the production side of things on that. So it's very, very satisfying. It's very fulfilling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was your first bass that you played? Do you remember the brand it was?
Me?
Yeah.
The school bass was a rental Yamaha. Can't remember which one it was, but it was a 4-string. It was white. I think I had a P and a J.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Everybody knows what P and J is, but except Cheryl. A P
Right.
pickup, a precision pickup, and a jazz pickup. But when I went to go play at church, I didn't have anything. So I think just one of the singers just had a bass at home. It was a red Tokai 4-string, and it had a sort of a quasi precision pickup. And I ended up restringing that from E to G to go from B to D because I wanted the 5-string range. And I played that for quite a long time until I eventually saved up my own money when I was 18 and bought a 5-string, and now I play a 6-string. So yeah, that's how it went.
Nice. And you're playing the 6-string now, the 6-string bass now?
Yeah, I tend to stick to 6.
Yeah.
And I've been playing the same bass for the last, how old is my daughter? 13 years? Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't tend to stray too much from that. If I have to play another sound, like a very different sound, then I'll borrow a bass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Colin, what bass do you play, by the way?
Right now,
Yeah.
in the studio, I have a 72 Precision.
Yeah.
And for live, I use Lakeland.
Okay.
Nice.
And you've been playing that bass for how long now? Or you've been playing bass for a
I got
while.
the P bass in 73. I bought it used.
Ah.
So that
I know
was
you're-
my second bass. My first bass I had bought at a pawn shop with a guitar amp, which tells you how much I knew about it. And I realized later that the body was probably made out of balsa wood and the neck was iron wood. Because I'd put it on and it immediately dived for the floor.
Gord, let's tell you your story. What was your first bass? I'm curious.
yeah, I didn't have the luxury of having a Tokai or anything like that. It was a Kent bass with strings like that were that far off the neck.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but the first bass that that was the one that my parents got me. And when they saw I was serious, I bought myself, because I was into Rush back then. So guess what I bought, guys?
Ricky?
Ricky,
Yeah,
of course.
Ricky.
Yeah.
And then I bought a second one, and get this. So I'm in one of the many ensembles I was playing with at music college, and one of the instructors goes, man, you can't play bass on that thing. I mean, you can't play jazz on that thing. And so I was at Mohawk at that time. So I was right when Furlanetto was just starting F basses. So got myself my first F bass, which was probably one of his worst kind of basses. It was made of Padauk, like it was the darkest sound ever, but I didn't know anything. So anyway, so I went through a number of F basses. In fact, believe it or not, that one behind me, yes, I know, Tim, you're looking weird at that because,
Really?
Because I bought a 63 jazz bass back in the day, and I wanted, and it was fretless, and I wanted a fretted version of that. So I went to George and I go, can you duplicate this neck and this body and make me a fretted version? And he went, nope. And I said, I got some money, and I'm like, come on, George, you can do it. And so he does it. So he made me a forced, that's a body, and that's not the original neck, because I put the neck on another one, but because I then wanted a 5-string, and I was one of the first guys, actually dating myself totally here, was one of the first guys in Toronto with a 5-string back in the mid 80s. And so I had to make me that 5-string neck and made it fit. So I've had that thing for a long time. And then I just recently pulled the frets out of that. So, but it's one of my 8 basses. And because I used to do a lot of sessions back in the day, and I would bring like 4 basses, maybe even 5 basses to a session, because you never know what the sound needed to be, right? And then I had a studio for many years in the Toronto area, and just happened to have all these basses on hand, because you never know what's going to fit in the track, right? So you guys know that. So, yep.
Yeah.
So I still have 8 basses, much to my wife's chagrin.
And the difference between all those basses is basically the sound level, like the tone?
No, it's not the level. It's because we bass players all know they all speak differently, and when they're sitting in a track, depending on the style of music, how the instrumentation, what the drums sound like, it's going to sit differently. And generally speaking, if you can't notice it, then that's the right bass. If it's sticking out like a sore thumb, it's like, yeah, you don't want the bass to, unless you're a Victor or something and you want it to be the bass feature, which usually you don't, or you get fired. You want it to be unnoticeable, right, guys? If no one's saying anything, it's like everything's good.
So that's the secret. Chris, what bass did you start with, and what do you play now?
Okay. Well, when you asked the question, I actually quickly grabbed my phone and I grabbed a picture of it off the internet. I don't still have it, but you ready for this? I'll just quickly.
Oh, wow.
There.
Wow.
That was my first bass. It was a Washburn Rudy Sarzo pointy guitar. Looks
like a Thunderbird or something almost.
It was more like a weapon than an instrument, really. It was really pointy and long and weird. And
was it a boat anchor too?
It was an absolute boat anchor, and the case was probably 25 pounds. And I used to walk with it, to band practice back and forth every night. And but my singer thought I should be playing that bass, and he was in charge, so he was the one that made me buy that bass. And I ended up selling it to a guy.
Weightlifter?
Yeah, he was a pretty big fella, but I thought I'd never get rid of it, because who's going to want this guitar? And there was a guy in a bar that I was playing in Grand Prairie, and he just loved it. He just absolutely had to have it. So he traded me a 78 Precision bass for that.
Good trade.
So, good trade, yeah. So I can't remember the guy's name, but buddy, if you're out there listening,
yeah, sorry.
Rock on.
Rock on. Oh, that's awesome. I just want to remind our viewers that right now you are watching GMIHub Online, and our topic today is it's all about the bass. I'm so thrilled that we have our wonderful bass players right now. We have Chris Byrne from the Roadhammers. We have Gord Lemon, who's a session bass player, well known and all across Canada. We have Tim Ball, also well known, at least in Ontario, if not all across Canada.
Yeah, we know him.
Mhm.
We
And
know
Oh,
him.
we have our guest co-host, Colin Ward, also a bass player. And we're so glad to have you all here. If this is your first time tuning in, just know that you are welcome to subscribe and to ring the bell so you know when GMI Hub is online is doing another broadcast like this. Also, if you want to know more about us, feel free to check us out on our website, gmihub.ca, where you'll learn a lot more about our projects and our events, and also our newsletter where we highlight different activities that are happening amongst the community of GMI Hub. One of the things that we're doing is a Christmas compilation album. And so if you are a songwriter out there, we are accepting song submissions. So if you have an original song that you kind of wanted a way to get that song out there and not sure how, we're willing to take it and put it on our compilation. And don't worry, we make sure that you get your royalties. We make sure that you get everything that's due to you. But we invite you to partner with us on this. So to find out more, go to gmihub.ca/Christmas project and you'll get more information. Now back to our regular programming. Okay, so I'm learning about the bass, so forgive me if I ask all the wrong questions, but I'm going to talk about one of the questions that I know that Colin you asked, and I think is a great question about is about the strings. Do you have a preference on the type of strings that are used on your bass?
Generally, no. I use both rounds and flats depending on, I don't know what month it is. I'll go through phases where I'll have rounds on for a long time, and then I'll sort of miss flats, and I'll throw a few sets of flats on. And I don't like the sound of one more than the other. I think that I can usually make a flat wound sound like a round string sometimes when I'm sort of stuck, but it's kind of hard to make a round wound sound like a flat. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. Maybe, Tim or Gord might be able to jump in on that one.
Other than the palm muting and using your thumb to make it sound like a flat, yeah, I mean, that's kind of tough. I've mostly used round wounds my whole career, except on my upright, obviously. But yeah, I've used mostly round wounds. I use flats on a fretless. The only bass I go back and forth on is on a fretless.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
I haven't really used flat wounds on a fretted, which by no means that that's not a thing. You by all means, I know many guys that use flat wounds on fretted. So
I have never used flats. So, and in fact, I kind of got sort of maybe I pigeonholed myself, but once I tried DR strings, I kind of got stuck on that. I think it's because they have
strings.
they have a higher output, I think. So it was hard to get away from that because everything else felt like I had to dig too hard to get the sound out. So right now I'm using DR DDTs because they're a little stiffer. So they're a little stiffer, so I can get the action lower.
Right.
The action is lower, I can play faster.
Yeah.
And
So,
especially, I mean, if you're using a bass for live, and you're playing in multiple styles and you need to use the thumb, those flats are not going to do it for you. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but you can take the rounds and, like you said, palm mute it, which is what I mostly do.
Yeah, exactly.
For that sound, for that more Motown kind of sound. That's what I go to.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys ever do that technique where you instead of muting on the right hand side with your palm and playing with the thumb, do you do the thing where you mute with these three fingers?
I'm doing that anyway.
Yeah, see, I never knew about this. I never knew about this until about 3 or 4 years ago, when I saw Danny Morris, who's an instructor at Berkeley, do it. He was talking about it, about getting that, that Jamerson and the old
Yeah.
James Brown kind of tone, where I always used to just do it with the right hand, but he does it with his left, where he plays only notes with his first finger, and these 3 fingers are sitting over top of the other strings the whole time. So there's no decay. There's no bloom in the note.
Right. I used to do that a little bit, like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But then I didn't want to sacrifice the other 3 fingers. Right. So I kind of I didn't even realize until you brought it up. I kind of stopped doing it. But
Okay.
that was why, because you have to, every time you want to change the notes, and
Yeah.
you have to move your whole hand, right?
Yeah.
So, but I guess I ended up the advantage of doing that is you get to have more dexterity on the right hand, because you're not muting with your right hand.
Yeah, I can play quicker,
Right.
you can play more notes, but
right. So what I ended up doing was palm muting and using 3 or 4 fingers with the palm mute.
okay,
Yes.
I'm out.
Sort of-
That's
That's what I do.
I mean,
That's what I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess that's where I landed. So, yeah.
that's great.
Colin, do you mute as well? Like, do you do this technique that they're talking about?
Yeah, pretty much. You have to, because if you don't, you're going to get loose strings sympathizingly vibrating, and it just gets pretty noisy. So
Yeah,
you do
I mean,
palm muting?
muting is as much as part of the bass as plucking it, right? Because Colin's right. If you're not doing that, then you're getting sympathetic vibration happening, and then people don't call you back anymore.
Right. That's some messy tracks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
have any of you tried the trick about putting the sponge rubber in the bridge to sort of make it
Like Victor does? No, I haven't actually.
No.
Yeah, the foam, like that used to come on the old
Yeah.
Fender basses,
If
right?
you're doing
Yeah.
bells.
if you're doing tapping and stuff, it's good, but
No, I think we're talking about 2 different things. Because we're talking about the foam under the down by the bridge, right, Colin?
oh,
Yeah, you're talking
I'm
about
sorry.
you're talking about the scrunchies, and that's a whole different topic that kind of drives me nuts.
yeah, sorry.
But
That's true.
yeah, they make a bridge now that does that same function, where it just sort of puts a mute on each string, and you can flick it on and off.
I remember on my Rickenbacker, there was a rubber thing, and you could raise it up or not to touch the string.
Yeah, I think Music Man had those for a while too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I had a 74 Stingray once. One of your questions should be, what bass have you sold that you kick yourself now that you've sold it? And
Well, now that you-
74 Stingray, 63 Jazz. Dope.
Yeah, that hurts. That hurts.
What about you guys?
Yeah.
That's a great question, Gord. What about you, Chris or Tim or Colin?
I had a 77 Jazz bass that I sold for. I had to pay the rent once. I didn't particularly like the instrument, but I sold it for cheap, a lot cheaper than it would be worth nowadays. But I don't know, Tim.
I haven't gone through that many basses. I had the red Tokai, the black PV 5-string, which Gord remembers, I think, because that's when I came to your house to take the lesson. And then I got the 6-string custom made, and that's been it.
Wow.
So I sold the PV, which I didn't mind, because as much as I like that bass, it kind of treated me bad a couple of times. Like I remember one of the tuning pegs broke right before a studio session. So I was tuning up to play, to get ready for the session, and the thing just comes right out. I was like, what do I do?
Oh my gosh.
So a guitar player had a Ken Smith at home, so he went and got it. That was very fortunate,
Wow.
And after that, I was like, okay, that's it. And then I went and searched a guy named Nathan Prasad. He lives in Cambridge, and he made the bass for me.
Nice.
And I've been on that ever since. And yeah, Yeah, I sold the PV. I didn't feel bad about it.
Right.
Nice.
Put new tuners out though. I switched out the tuners, but that was it.
That's
Yes,
cool.
I've had many basses over the years. Too many to count now, actually.
Mm.
Yeah, I've had quite a few too.
Is there a bit of a collector's gene there, or?
Yeah,
There
I mean
is.
the vintage Fender thing for sure. I kind of
Yeah.
that one bit me kind of hard. You know, I got bit by that bug, and I had 3 or 4 of them floating around here at one point, like
Mm.
early '60s Fenders, and now I'm down to 1. So,
Mm.
you know,
I wish I had those 2 Rickies back. Of course, the Music Man, the Fender. I had the first issue Squire bass that was
Is that made
a
in Japan?
Japan
Yeah.
model that I sold. Oh man, I can't even remember the basses that I've, just been a lot. A bunch of those F basses. There was a couple beauties actually that I sold that would have been great to have, but it's either wife or basses. Apparently those 2 things just don't mix as well as I.
You know, yeah, I'm probably giving myself away here, but you know what? I kind of figured out how to do. It's a little trick, and you buy the bass, and then you wait till you go to a session, and you take like 3 or 4 basses with you, and then on the way home, you stop, pick the guitar up at the music store, and just bring it into the house with the rest of them. And
I
then
love it.
yeah, I mean, it's I don't think my wife is watching this, honey. You are. I love you.
So Chris, if you
I
get in
love you.
trouble,
Yeah.
so Chris, if you get in trouble, make sure you have a bouquet of flowers attached to the brand new bass, so that
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you guys, playing in the pocket. What does that mean? Playing in the pocket.
Well, I can start that. So there is a groove that's created between the bassist and the drummer. And based on your relationship with the drummer, a synchronicity will be created through basically the hi-hat, kick drum, and snare, and the bass, whether you're following the kick drum as the bass pattern or not, both can be in the pocket. And it just is the groove, that underlying groove that feels good, that the rest of the instruments above it now can thrive upon and be inspired by, because of the great feeling that is produced between the 2 main elements, under foundational elements.
Okay.
Yeah.
I sounded like a dictionary just then, didn't I? It sounded pretty good.
I don't have anything to add.
Slow down, man. I'm writing this down right now.
Okay, so that's playing in the pocket. So is there such a thing as playing? I guess there is such a thing as playing out of the pocket, and I guess how does that affect the band? Or is there a way of playing out of the pocket but it still works for the band?
Do you play behind the beat slightly, or ahead of the beat, or right on it?
I think I can answer that for Gord. And oddly enough, because I remember sitting in on a session for Toronto Mass Choir that you did a long time ago, and I think when you were out of the room, they were commenting on how your bass notes were landing right behind the kicks.
Yeah,
like every time. And to me, I was like, why would he do that? But that creates more space for the kick, correct, Gord?
Exactly right. And the pocket increases in size, if you will, if that makes sense. So, and it provides I feel kind of, it makes the music that's produced between the bass and the drums naturally sit back and feel a bit more relaxed and groovy, funkier, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, and conversely, Colin, you were saying playing ahead of the beat. There are certain musics where that is applicable, but, and I shouldn't say but, because it is, but I find that to be, for the most part, a bit less applicable than the opposite, personally. Because when you're playing ahead of the beat, that means the drummer has to be consciously kind of playing behind it. And although it sounds like you're accomplishing the same thing as the opposite, it makes the tune feel a bit more on edge and rushy. And perhaps the best way to describe doing that, maybe it would be, and I'm throwing this out here to you guys, but an example would be if I was using a pick, and I only generally use a pick in a like straight eights kind of rock thing, right? That playing ahead of the beat in that would provide the forward momentum that a tune like would require. Does that make sense? So I would tend to put it ahead of the beat and make it feel not rushy uncomfortably, but just really propelling the groove forward. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, it's just excitement. You're just creating excitement.
Adding excitement, yeah.
That's the word for it. I mean, if you're playing driving eighth notes, you know, there's different ways of going about it. Like you said, you know, playing straight on it, and then you can subdivide, you know, so that the quarter notes are the ones that are accented. You could be dropping the quarter notes. There's a million different ways of going about it. But yeah, I mean, building that excitement, I think of playing ahead of the beat, or, you know, I guess if that's what we want to call it, I think of the Police, you know, and Stuart Copeland, it just sounded like he was always on the verge of speeding up. And a lot of times he did, I think.
That's why they broke up. But
yeah,
that's another story.
Yeah, but I mean, it's exciting to listen to. You know, it's just like a heartbeat goes up. It's just like our breathing goes up, our rate goes up. You know, music, if it does the same thing, I'm not offended by it.
So I'm thinking of the Roadhammers. I'm thinking of their style of music. So would you say that you're mostly playing to build that excitement, like that ahead of the beat, I guess, or ahead of?
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, the Roadhammers are sort of it's an odd bird, because it's not necessarily a country band at all. You know, I mean, a lot of us are coming from a rock and roll background, and a lot of R&B and blues, you know, myself personally. And so there's a lot of aggression in the music. It's an exciting thing when it's live anyway. You know, on record, it's a different thing entirely, but the live show is, it's rock and roll, you know. Ahead of the beat, I don't know, man. We're just trying to have a good time. I'm not thinking too consciously about, you know, am I ahead? Is it behind? Am I rushing this? You know, it's just like, can I see people smiling? Then that's what's important, you know, in that case anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I find for the studio, though, because I produced a lot of records over the years, when you are producing an artist that is in one genre or the other, you have to be very cognizant of, you know, what the groove is, and where the bass and the relationship between the bass and the drums. And I think one of the tragedies that producers these days are afflicted with is making everything, like the kick and the bass, together right on all the time, which takes out, it defeats the whole purpose. It takes the feel right out of the music, right?
Yeah. What you were talking about, what Gord was talking about, was that the attack of the kick drum, and then the bloom that comes after it, the bass, like allowing it to kind of happen. You know, it's almost like the bass note becomes a part. It becomes the tail end of the kick drum, you know, and the quarter note all of a sudden goes from being this big to being this big.
Exactly, you know? Right.
Yeah.
It's
it's all in the details, and it takes years, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm sure we all are. You know?
It is. Stop trying to line up those wavelengths to be exactly the same, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all
I,
you producers.
a side note, with the ideas of playing behind the beat, I'm working with a lot of younger musicians, younger drummers at church, and we play in a clique. And for a lot of them, it's their first time. And honestly, as soon as I say play behind the beat, that fixes it. Because the trick is when they play behind the beat, they have to wait for the beat to happen. They have to listen for it first and then play, right? So it's the quickest trick. And all of a sudden they're playing behind the beat. It's awesome. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
And that's to get more of the groove happening, right, Tim?
Yeah.
It just enhances the feel, right? And it gives people that thing that they feel,
Head
right?
bob. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, gives that head bob.
As an example, I used to listen to a lot of, rock and roll and heavy metal, I guess you could say. But when I first heard a band called King's X, I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of them. They're a trio from Texas. And when I first heard that music, I mean, it was sort of mid to slow tempo, but it's like, it just was so in the pocket, I guess you could say. I'd never heard music like it before, because there was like, the quarter note would land and then there would be just that a little bit of space, like that little bit of hesitation before the next quarter note would come in. And just the whole music just had this lilt to it that I'd never really heard before.
Hey, if you are listening in right now, you are tuning into GMIHub Online, where you are learning about, we're talking to some bassists right now, session bassists, live bassists, band basis, however you want to say it. I am so happy that we have with us 4 great bass players with us. We have Tim Ball here in Ontario. We have Chris from Calgary, Alberta, and we have Gord from BC, originally from the GTA, and we have Colin Ward from Burlington, who's also co-hosting with me. And we are talking about the bass, we just finished talking about playing in the pocket. Hey, if you have any questions, I believe the chat's open, so go ahead and post some questions in the chat. And I mean, it's the one time you can actually do that. And we'll be happy to ask them here while we're here. Join the conversation as well. Again, if it's your first time, feel free to subscribe and ring the bell so you know when we are doing another live webcast. And if you want to know more about GMIHub, check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also check our website, gmihub.ca, where you will learn about the different projects that we are working on, any events that we are working on, and you can sign up to our newsletter and be a part of that, because we love to highlight what is happening amongst all our GMIHub community. So, you go ahead and you do that. And we are going to go back to this conversation. That was my commercial plug. Okay, so we talked about playing in the pocket, and what came up was the relationship with the drummer. Okay, now Tim, you already said that you want your drummer to play behind. For example, you say just wait for the beat and then they play and it solves everything. But I mean, are you able to develop that relationship with all the drummers like that, or is it just like, how does that work?
Take some time, but because I think, especially in church and our church, it can be quite exciting, right? And as soon as everybody gets excited, they start to play faster. And conversely, if they're tired, they start to play slower, and everything feels fast to them. And it does take some time, but I found that to be the quickest fix. Is say just say, hey, play behind the beat, and all of a sudden, they're playing in time. Even if it's they're still a little bit off, it's a lot better, right? You just give them time, and they start to come along. Yeah.
In a session situation, Gord, do you normally play while the drummer is playing, or do you play separately from the drummer? In other words,
Right, good question. Back in the day, before COVID and what we're experiencing now, probably 90% of the time would play with the drummer, for sure. And really, it's to be able to garner that excitement, to be able to react together. is just such a natural thing. And I've been blessed to be playing with, you know, so many world-class drummers when I was in Toronto, and and just have that connection to be able to react to, you know, even if we're playing to a scratch vocal and, you know, a keyboardist or a guitarist playing along, you're able to react in real time to something and really create a moment that is then there forever, you know? Because, and the alternative is, if the drummer puts down their part first, they're reacting probably very, not very much, because they don't want to do too much, because they're the initial person putting down the first official kept track on the song. And so they don't want to do too much because they don't want to get in anybody's way. They're thinking that. And then when all the subsequent instruments go on, it's a bit more stale because it's just play the part and there's less of that live feel created. So at least when the bass and drums are doing it, you can at least create a couple moments in a song that at least relate to you two guys or gals, whatever it is. Sorry, no offense to Jazz.
I won't tell her.
So those are created in the tune, and then the rest of the people who are building on their tracks can potentially even react to that further. So,
yeah, well said. Yeah, it's very reactionary for sure. With live, you know, off the floor with the band, it's a different experience, because you know, like now with COVID, we all know what it's like to be doing tracks in isolation. I find that you know, you get to actually spend more time creating a part, and you know, the trade-off for that is the live experience of, you know, when a guy's, you know, banging on drums sitting right next to you. I mean, that's fun, you know, and it can only be captured one way, and that's by doing it live, you know.
exactly. And at the moment, like, you could be doing a take and go, as you're carving your parts, right? And go to the drummer, hey, why don't we, you know, do a triplet figure going into the bridge here? And then all of a sudden, now you've both agreed on a part right at that second because of the inspiration that you felt, you know?
Do you think, well, I have kind of a two-parter question now. One, do you think that bass players need to know how to play drums in order to develop a relationship, like that kind of a relationship? I don't know how to say it, synergy between bass and drums. You know, do you think they need to know that?
I'll let the other guy speak, other than saying, I think every bass player is a wannabe drummer. Then,
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
That's my answer too. That's
I can't play drums at all. I play keyboard and organ and whatnot. But I'll say that I always get mad when drummers start playing bass and their pocket is better than mine.
yeah.
It's happened a couple of times. Yeah, I'm like, just
Like-
go away. But yeah, so it would help. I guess that's the answer. It would help.
Yeah.
But, it's
But
not-
I mean, as bassists, you know, we work with drummers. When we listen to music, we're listening to that relationship, drums and bass. So,
yeah,
you know, we can all go, like, we know what drummers do, right?
yeah.
And so,
yeah.
and when you're explaining a drum part, you don't have to be going, you know, playing that thing, what do you call it? No, we know what everything is, and we can explain a drum fill that we want or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
we all get that. I just can't. I mean, I'm a horrible drummer. I can't do it. I can explain it.
It's all up here, right?
Yeah, it's all up
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
All in the brain. So what tips would you give for anybody? Like, let's just say right now we have viewers that are watching. Some may be in a worship team, some of them may be in a band. What tips would you give them for, I guess, developing that synergy between bass and drums, or the drummer, I guess?
I'd say do it a lot, you know, and play with as many different drummers as you possibly can, as many different bands and as many different situations as you can. Because, you know, it really, for me, it comes down to, you know, the drummer's internal clock. Like if he hears if he hears that groove, if he feels it the same way as I do, then it's going to be great. And I've played with fantastic drummers where it just wasn't quite, it didn't feel perfect, but everybody was playing the part, but sometimes it just feels better with certain drummers, and I think, I don't know about, Tim and Gord, but they might agree with me. Do you guys have favorite drummers, like, just because?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, my wife is one.
So you better
Yeah,
say your
so
wife
yeah.
there, Tim.
Careful.
But honestly, well, that relationship is like so tight that I don't even notice it. I hate to say that, but that's how natural it's been. But I definitely do have like a handful of favorite guys, but like I could learn to work with anybody.
Mhm.
In terms of, you said tips
Yeah.
for this may sound weird, but I would say uh before attempting the song, make a real attempt to understand the emotional intent of the song before attacking it, or before coming up with a groove with the drummer or anything, because you could take it a different direction than it was meant to be. You know what I mean? Even with the drummer could go with you. um uh, I don't know, this is an extreme example, but there's that video floating around of that drummer going nuts on Oceans. You ever seen that? But that's extreme. But I would say, like, um, the groove has to support what the original intention of the song was, and all your ideas have to do that too. So make a real attempt to understand where the song is coming from first.
Sorry, when you said the video of Oceans, I didn't see the one of Oceans. I saw the one of the drummer going crazy on "I'm a little teapot, short and stout." So
I know that one too. I know that one too.
didn't hear a bass player on that one, but hey.
Yeah.
um, Colin, Gord, or Chris, do you guys have any tips on how to what would you suggest in terms of building relationships with the drummer, or that synergy between bass and drums?
I've got a couple tips, but Colin, you go first, man.
I was going to say, just start talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because lots of times I played in worship teams and that rotate every week is different. And, you have to keep reestablishing it. But somebody's got to start the conversation, so I always do that because I know it's better if I do.
Point. Good point. Get to know the drummer personally, so to speak. Yeah.
And I would say listen to a lot of music outside the normal genre that you listen to music in, and really explore the great bassists and drummers that are out there. And my second thing would be to really work on your internal clock. So play with a click super slow, put the click in different places, and really be able to subdivide so it becomes internal, right? Play things like insanely slow, and that's going to help your groove 1,000%.
Yeah.
Very.
I'd have to say that what I said before is just playing as much as you possibly can with as many people as you possibly can. When I grew up, I was playing 6 nights a week, 3 sets a night, and you learn how to play doing that. You have to. And a lot of people don't get to do that these days. There's just the gigs aren't there. The venues aren't there. So it's important to kind of just play with as many people as you possibly can and listen to as much wide range of music as you can, just like Gord said. Yeah.
Cool. I have a question from the audience, which I'll ask all 4 of you. Do bassists have to build up calluses as well as the way guitarists do? Are there any pet peeves a bass player in church or on stage in general? So that's 2 questions from one person. So
What was
one,
the second question?
first part was about calluses. Do you have to build them up? The second one, any pet peeves?
Oh, ha.
The callous question is yes, right? There's no way around that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just
Callous
wondering
question is just play, man. You just get them.
yeah.
If you don't have them, you're not playing enough. There you go.
Yeah, you get.
And
I got the tree frog thing going, you know, where they're just sort of the tips. You get the balls going on the end of your fingers. Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
and my biggest pet peeve, especially on worship teams, and I mean this in love. How's that? And it's with piano players and their left hand.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Oh, I
And
know.
so to all you piano players, learn to play with two hands and with one that isn't doing the octaves, but learn how to voice properly up here and not just play with one hand and then be plunking out the bass notes. Because the bass player likes to do something other than playing the root, and when he does, then it creates a cacophony of low mass of garble low end. So put a piece of tape at about your low G or the G below middle C and never go below that.
Very true. Colin,
I
any-
fortunately am married to a keyboard player, and she does that after a few weeks of discussion.
Right. So with a little jazz knowledge and understanding how to, do fills or create a bit more intricate voicings, then you're able to play two hands and not get in the bass player's way.
That's a good one. I think I've heard that for a number of bands. Any other pet peeves? Chris, any pet peeves? You got it all down. Like everyone just plays really good with you.
You know, man, I like or love everything, and I guess getting my socks wet,
Yeah.
that's like you ever step in a puddle in the kitchen? It just, I don't like that, or getting jam on your hands, anything sticky on your hands. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, everything's okay here.
Cool.
Jim?
Or stepping in a puddle and then touching the mic with your lips. That's
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I've seen the blue light before. Let me tell you.
Tim, the
Pet-
question. Go ahead.
Pet peeve?
Yeah.
So
any
we're
pet-
still on that? It's been a while since I've been peeved at things, to be honest. But I guess an old one would be drummers that pretend the click isn't there.
Mm.
I've had that happen a couple of times, but they're trying and then they just say, okay, forget it. No one will care, and everyone else is like, we care. But that was, yeah.
we do care.
Yeah. So, but that that hasn't happened in a while. I think with the advent of everybody playing on Instagram and everything, and everybody's got home recording rigs. I think that's a skill that's come a long way across the board. So I'm grateful for that. But other than that, to be honest, just show up on time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another question from the audience. Being the instrument that holds down the fundamental, is there any stories you have where you like to mess with the chord changes by changing the bass notes to see your bandmaster's reactions?
That's Johnny
Always.
Nixon, isn't it? That's Johnny Nixon asking that question because you tried to text.
Yes, it is.
No ways. Johnny up there? All right.
I don't know if that's directed at me, Johnny. I don't.
I'll say it's to all of you. All of you.
Well, it depends on the idiom, but I always, I'll play the third in the bass depending on if it makes sense. If it's a jazz tune, I'm going to be doing tritone subs. So, is it to get the reaction of the leader? No, but some people, people will react That's for sure. I mean, not in a bad way, hopefully, but hopefully they're like, yeah, yay, but
Yeah.
not always.
Yeah, especially in repeating motifs too, you know, in a song, like if you're coming out like a tag outro chorus or something like that, you know, then that seems to play a nice part. You can play,
Sure.
you know, the low fifths of a few chords or the thirds, or, you know, any kind of counter melody. It seems to be a good spot to get it.
Exactly.
I want to say that I want to say that it's been a while since I've done that, because I used to get carried away with that. That's probably what Johnny's referring to. Like I said, I want to say that it's been a while, but I think I did it last week. So
Yeah, it's
So
a
I'm
strong
just gonna-
spice, man. Not too
yeah,
much. Too much.
yeah. Oh man.
Colin, do you ever do that in your band and kind of change the bass notes so that, you know, just get a little creative there in your band?
After I started my studio, I pretty much dropped half of what I was playing.
Really?
Yeah, and just at first I never met a note I didn't like, and then I realized that I needed to just cut back, way back, because finally understood less is more.
Mm.
So I just sort of like try to find my place in the song, and as my guitar player says, it's my job to make the singer sound good.
Ah.
So as long as they don't notice me, I'm doing it right.
Which is what you said before. I'm not just you, but all of you have said that you know you're playing right when nobody notices, which I find interesting. So what do you say with bass players that actually can come out and actually solo on the bass? Or do you
Well,
guys
there's a
get
time
that?
and place for that,
Right.
right? And depending on the genre, I've got a funk band here, and you know, some tunes are bass features, and I play a lot of jazz too. And of course, you know, you do your typical round of everybody soloing, and that's when you solo. But you don't solo in, you know, if it's a country tune or whatever, that's just a pop tune. That's the place where you just need to do your thing and not be noticed. And maybe, you know, put one little, if there's a spot to do one little fill, and it's tasteful, then that's the spot to do it. But, you know, time and place, right? And it's all about taste.
Mm. Do you all
Agree.
go ahead, Tim?
I said I have to agree. I just think like I grew up playing choir music, and there might be a lot more spots to do that stuff.
Choir music, yeah, for
here
sure.
and there, but yeah, right, because everybody's going off, so it's kind of like, okay, if you don't, then you gotta come up. But well, you know, that's the nature of that. But like you said, Gord, that's time and place, right? So I'm not going to take that approach on a pop tune or a country tune or even a ballad.
Yeah. Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, do you ever have that opportunity when you're playing there, Chris, like to do that kind of bass solo type thing, or is it purely like you're supporting whatever's going on around you?
Yeah, in the Roadhammers, not so much. I mean, there's sort of bass features in that show, you know, some different effects pedals and things like that, but not too much flashy stuff. I'm in a band in Calgary here. It's an instrumental band. That the Flat Whites is the name of the band, and it's just a trio: guitar, bass, and drums. Russ Broom is the guitar player, and Spencer Sheehan is the drummer. And actually, the three of us do a lot of session work together. So we just started, you know, we put together a gig and we play like a bunch of surf tunes and things like that, and blues songs. And in that situation, you know, I can get away with just a little bit more of stepping outside, because there's a lot of space to be filled for sure.
I used to play in many R&B bands in Toronto, and when, you know, you'd play the tunes, you know, that people knew, but you'd do your own interpretations, and sometimes the singer would just go,
Yeah.
now it's time for the bass, and then you just gotta step up and do it,
Yeah.
you know, and And that's what you need to do. You got to be able to sit back and be that support person. But when you got to bring it, you got to bring it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've been talking for an hour and we can go on. Like we've only done, a few of my little questions. But I wanted to ask you, memorable gigs. Do you have any memorable gigs and why do they stick out in your head? If you have any. Whether it's session, whether it's live.
I got a lot of them personally.
Oh.
I don't want to.
Yeah,
I did a
Sorry.
number of overseas tours entertaining the Canadian UN troops. So that was kind of touring all over the world, Canadian, performing to our Canadian UN forces all over the world. Those were super rewarding. Super rewarding, playing to our fellow Canadians serving overseas. So those were awesome. And I mean, again, I don't want to hog the conversation, but I've done a lot of great gigs with some very talented people and famous people too. So, I've been blessed to do that.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, Gord, did you ever play with Doug Riley in Toronto?
Yep, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a memorable experience. How do you ever forget something like that?
Yeah,
I did one gig with him and it just freaked me out. It's one of those gigs you'll never forget.
Yeah. I used to hire him on sessions too.
Yeah, he's
my very first one. Funny enough, he had to play 2 organ solos, and it was like one of my very first production gigs. It was at Metalworks, and he comes in, and we rolled the tape, and yes, tape, and he plays a solo. I'm like, okay, that was awesome. Okay. Like, do I ask him to do another take just for posterity? No, I didn't. And he was in and out in like 20 minutes or something and played amazing, of course. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Wow. So for Chris, it was playing with Doug Riley.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, playing a lot of the memorable gigs are, the music. There's other, I got to, play the Grand Ole Opry a handful of times, which was, that was
nice.
It's pretty monumental,
Yeah.
to my dad, was fanatical, and he wasn't alive when I did it, but I just so wished he could have witnessed that, because he would have been so proud,
Sure.
But a lot of the memorable gigs for me are the people that I've played with, and that's what freaks out. Like Doug Riley, I did that gig with him, and he put a bunch of chord charts in front of me, and this was back when I still couldn't really read a chord chart very well at all, and he was playing a Hammond B3 with bass pedals, and I got lost in the chart, and all of a sudden the bass kicked in. Like, he started playing the bass with his feet, and I looked over him, and he goes, just, I'll keep it up until you can find your way. And he'd play along with his feet, and then I'd look at the chart, and I found it, and I'd be like, can he be okay? And he'd take his feet off the pedals, And it's like the lessons that you learn like that along the way from, masters, like him.
That's awesome. Well, Doug Riley, if you're watching.
No, he's passed.
he's not. Yeah.
I guess he's not watching.
Yeah, he passed.
Oh. Tim, any memorable gigs?
Besides when my band 2013 we released our album. It's not a band; it was more like a worship team. But I had written all the songs, so just seeing people show up in the first place for that was something, and actually enjoying it. That I'll never forget that. Also, I played for University of Toronto choir when they went to Japan, and that was, I'll never forget that. Just how much they love gospel music, gospel choir music in Japan. That floored me. It was like, and they're very good at it as well. It was incredible. Or even just playing for with Karen Burke at York University Choir. Just a bunch of kids who had never been in a choir before. By the end of the semester, killing it and singing with as much passion as they can. Like, oh, that's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for experiences like that. You know, that's the real gift of the music. You know what I mean? Like that's the good stuff right there.
Yeah.
But like hearing your own music being played is awesome. Like, I play in a couple big bands here, like 18-piece jazz bands, and I write a bunch for the band, and to hear what you've worked out and all that kind of stuff, and then hear that happen, that's really fulfilling. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Any memorable gigs for you, Colin?
Oh, just back in the 80s when I was in the union and did the bar circuit and filled in, there's a lot of weird stuff went on there.
Well, that's the 80s. Yeah, that's a whole other program.
Tell me about it.
We definitely have to have a bass, all about the bass part too. But Gord, one other question did pop up, and I'm just going to say this name, Chuck Berry.
Right. Interesting individual, interesting gig.
Did you? Yeah, you played with Chuck?
Yeah. So
details.
Well, I think the person who's asking this question knows the answer already, but interesting fella. You'd rehearse, and basically his music is 1-4-5 or 1-5-4-1, right? And they all start like the same, right? They all start the same. And so you'd rehearse, and you'd go, okay, this is the one that's the 1-5-4, and you'd know the key. And then on the gig, he'd just start, and like it wouldn't correspond to the set list that we had. And you'd be looking at the guys going, is this the 1-5-4 or the 1-4-5? Like, when was this? And you're searching around for a second for the key because, don't have perfect pitch. So it takes a second and everyone finally locks in, but it's so funny. And he's just out there doing his thing, like basically oblivious to the band at that point. That was it. Yeah. That was on my list of interesting gigs. Yeah, that was one of those, man. That was bizarre.
Oh my goodness. Well, guys, this has been awesome. And you know what? I think we could probably go on for another hour and a half, but I want to respect your time. And I think we need to have, put it in the chat. Do you think we need to have, it's all about the bass part 2 with these gentlemen? If so, you need to put it in the chat. I want to thank you guys for being here. It's such an awesome conversation. I've learned a lot. I think I'm going to pick up the bass now and I'm going to impress you guys. Or I need to do one on drums and get your wife on there, Tim. And any other suggested drummers as well. But for all of you who've been watching, thank you so much for joining us. So great for you to be here. Again, if you want to watch this again, this is going to be available on YouTube. So feel free to hit the replay and listen to this conversation again. If you have any other questions you wanted to ask these guys, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll make sure we forward it to them. Again, if you want to know more about GMIHub, go to gmihub.ca and you'll learn about our newsletter, our project, the Christmas project, which if you have a song, feel free to submit it to us. June 13th is the due date, but if you at least let us know that you're planning to send in a song, that would be great. Just email us at song@gmihub.ca, and then we can definitely look out for it. Also check it out for any events that we are doing that are coming up, and there will be some, so definitely check us out. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter and YouTube. As you know, feel free to subscribe, ring the bell, so that you can know when we are doing this again, which we will be doing again. Actually, we actually have another week where we are going to be talking about DAW next week, which is Studio Talk. So you do not want to miss that. As for the gentlemen here, Chris, Tim, Gord, Colin, thank you so much for being here and sharing your stories and your insight about the bass. And I know, again, we can do this again. I hope you all had fun talking with one another about the bass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and I know our audience had a great time listening to you. So again, thank you so much. And everyone else, thank you so much. Remember that GMIHub is here to encourage unity, community, mentorship, and talent growth. Have a good week. We'll see you next time.